I want you to think about the last few one-on-ones you've had. Who did most of the talking? Who solved most of the problems? And when someone didn't know what to do, who gave them the answer? If the answer to all three is you, you may not be coaching your team the way you want. You may be training them to depend on you. And believe me, I used to do the exact same thing. Today, I'm going to give you three conversations you can use in your next one-on-one. Small changes in the questions that you ask around better thinking, more ownership, and accountability. Conversation one, around building thinking. Imagine a rep walks into your office for their next one-on-one. The rep says, "My champion likes the proposal, but procurement is pushing back. What should I do?" I could immediately say, get the champion on a call, find out what's happening with procurement. I'll join if you need me. Problem solved. Except the rep learned almost nothing. Instead, try this. What do you think is actually happening with the deal? I think procurement is trying to get a bigger discount. Maybe. What evidence do you have? Actually, not very much, just a feeling. Okay. What else could be happening with the opportunity? My champion might not have enough influence internally to get this done. Very possible. How could we pressure test the deal? I could ask, what have they personally done since we sent them the proposal? Exactly. So, what are you going to do between today and our next one-on-one? Notice what happened. I didn't give them the diagnosis. I helped them build their own narrative. And here's where managers sometimes get it wrong. We like to ask, what do you think? That's not coaching. It's opening the door for the coaching to continue. Following it with, what evidence do you have? What else could be happening? What options have you considered? What would change your mind? Now you're not coaching in action, you're coaching how they think. If I give you my answer, I solve one problem. If I improve the way you think, I potentially solve like the next 100. So don't use your experience to eliminate their thinking. Use it to elevate and improve it. Now that first conversation can be difficult. Second one can be even harder because this time the employee is not bringing you just a question, they're bringing you an entire problem. And if you're like I was as a manager, I jumped right in and I took it. Conversation two is around building ownership. So here's what it sounds like. A rep walks in and says, "This customer is escalating. I think I need you on the next call." The hero manager says, "Great, send me the invite, I'll be there." Instead, I want to challenge you. Ask them, tell me what's happening. Have the rep explain the situation so that you can go back and say, "Oh, great, what have you already tried?" The rep explains what's going on. Now we can go and say, what are two ways that you could handle this situation without me? They give you option one. They now give you option two, and you ask the important question, which one would you choose and why? And if their thinking is sound, let them try it. That is productive tension. I want to make an important distinction too. I'm not saying that you never help your people. I'm saying don't help them so quickly that you steal the opportunity for them to learn and grow. Because sometimes I already know I'm going to join the call, but I still ask the questions. Because solving the customer problem and developing the person aren't mutually exclusive. A good leader does both. And you might ultimately have to step in, but create the learning moment before you do. The hero trap doesn't start when your team needs you. It starts when you need your team to need you. Eventually, here's what you want people saying when you walk into your one-on-one. Here's the problem. Here's what I think is causing it. Here are my options. Here's what I recommend. That is true ownership from that salesperson. And that's leadership development happening in real time. The first conversation builds on thinking. The second builds on ownership. And the third, that's immediately getting one-on-one attention. You've probably heard it 100 times. The rep says, "I'm waiting on." I want you to then ask, what can you control? Waiting on the customer, legal, pricing, marketing, another department, waiting on someone else? Because sometimes you are just legitimately waiting. That's an important distinction because the reality is waiting describes their situation. It doesn't describe their next move. So ask what's outside of your control and let them answer. Okay, now what's inside your control? And finally, what are you going to do before our next one-on-one? Because that's the progression. Wait, control, action. Commitment. We're seeing a progress and a process take place. And this becomes particularly powerful when someone you're coaching lacks urgency. Because one of the least useful things that we can say to someone is, you just need more urgency. Okay, how? Instead, make the cost of waiting visible. What happens if you wait? What is the cost of inaction? What can you control? What are you committing to before your next one-on-one? Now we're not just naming the behavior, we're actually helping them see what the consequences are. The same approach works for someone who's really behind on performance. Instead of immediately saying, your pipeline isn't where it needs to be, I need more activity, I want you to start with, why do you think you're behind? Then, what's inside your control? And finally, what are you committing to change this week? There's an important leadership principle under this. I want the person to own the diagnosis before I prescribe the treatment. Because accountability isn't me telling you what you're going to do. Accountability is you owning what you're going to do. That's huge. So let's pull all three of these conversations together. First, they want an answer. Don't immediately give them one. Ask, what do you think? It builds thinking. 2, they bring you a problem. Don't immediately take it. Ask, what are your options? That builds ownership. 3, they're stuck. Don't simply accept the waiting. Ask, what is in your control? It builds accountability. Here's what I love about this framework. All three conversations end with the exact same question. What are you committing to before our next one-on-one? That's what turns one-on-ones from status updates into real coaching conversations. So before your next one-on-one, don't try all three, just pick one. And if someone constantly asks you what to do, ask, what do you think? If they are consistently bringing you problems, ask, what are the options? And if they're consistently waiting, ask them, what is in your control? Right, find out where the balance is in the next one-on-one, because teaching your people is the primary objective of the one-on-one. Are you teaching them, or are you just solving problems? Right, in the end, the objective is build independence, or you're going to reinforce it. And sometimes the difference is just one better question. If you want more practical leadership conversations, subscribe. We're going to do this every week and find a new way for us to level up our leadership in this Truth series.